Most people are not lazy. That is the convenient lie they cling to because it feels forgiving. It allows them to believe that success is simply a matter of trying harder tomorrow. In reality, most people wake up early, stay busy all day, exhaust themselves with tasks, meetings, planning sessions, and constant motion. They are not idle. They are overloaded, and yet, despite all this effort, they remain weak, stagnant, and replaceable. The real problem is not a lack of effort. It is the systematic waste of effort. Human energy is not scarce because people refuse to work. It is scarce because it is scattered. Effort sprayed in all directions creates noise, not power. The weak are busy, the strong are selective. This distinction is uncomfortable because it attacks the moral value people attach to hard work. Business feels virtuous. Selectivity feels dangerous. Saying no feels like laziness even when it is the most intelligent move available. Weak people measure their worth by how full their schedule looks. Strong people measure their worth by how much leverage each action creates. They understand that not all work is equal and that most activity produces no meaningful advantage. Doing more does not create power. Doing the right thing does. Motion without direction is not progress. It is friction. Most people confuse exhaustion with advancement. They assume that if they are tired, they must be moving forward. But exhaustion is often evidence of misalignment, not growth. Power is not built through volume. Power is built through direction. A man who pushes in 10 directions moves nowhere. A man who pushes relentlessly in one direction changes the terrain itself. Here is the truth most people refuse to confront. If effort alone created success, almost everyone would already be powerful. They are not, because effort without hierarchy becomes chaos. Every action competes with every other action. Every hour spent on one task is an hour stolen from something else. Time, attention, and energy are always being traded, whether consciously or not. Yet, most people refuse to rank their actions by importance. They treat trivial tasks with the same seriousness as decisive ones, flattening all outcomes into mediocrity. This is why they remain average despite working harder every year. They add more effort to the wrong structure instead of changing the structure itself. The strong do not work harder. They work narrower. They accept that most efforts are worthless. They understand that saying yes is a tax on future power, and that every unnecessary commitment bleeds leverage. Weakness is not the absence of effort. Weakness is the refusal to choose. The nature of growth: resources are always limited. Growth is not constrained by ambition. It is constrained by resources. This is the reality most people refuse to accept because it forces uncomfortable trade-offs. Time is limited. Money is limited. Attention is limited. Energy is limited. Even willpower decays under pressure. No individual, no organization, no empire escapes this law. Pretending otherwise is not optimism. It is delusion. Opportunities, however, appear infinite. There is always another idea, another project, another partnership, another improvement that seems reasonable on the surface. This asymmetry is where most people lose. When opportunities outnumber resources, strategy becomes the art of sacrifice. Without sacrifice, growth collapses into fragmentation. Those who fear sacrifice attempt to do everything. They spread resources thin, hoping balance will save them. Instead, they are slowly torn apart by hundreds of tasks that all feel justified. Each one demands attention. Each one consumes time. None of them receive enough force to produce dominance. What looks like ambition from the outside is often cowardice on the inside. The inability to choose what must die so something stronger can live. Every act of growth is an act of exclusion. When you invest resources into one direction, you are actively starving another. This is not a flaw of strategy. It is its core mechanism. Growth requires concentration, and concentration demands abandonment. The refusal to abandon is the refusal to grow. Most people manage resources emotionally rather than strategically. They protect projects because they are familiar. They continue initiatives because they already invested time. They keep weak priorities alive because killing them feels like admitting failure. This behavior is fatal. Resources do not care about feelings. They obey math, physics, and pressure. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. He did not ask what is interesting. He asked what is essential. He did not ask what could work. He asked what must work. Everything else becomes irrelevant noise. When resources are limited, and they always are, clarity becomes more valuable than effort. Growth accelerates not when resources increase, but when allocation improves. A mediocre amount of time placed in the right position creates more power than massive effort wasted everywhere else. This is why small, focused organizations often outgrow large, distracted ones. Size does not create leverage. Precision does. Those who attempt to preserve all options end up with none. Optionality feels safe in the short term, but it slowly erodes momentum. Real growth requires irreversible decisions. Once resources are committed deeply enough, retreat becomes impossible and progress becomes inevitable. The core truth is simple and unforgiving. You cannot grow everything. You must decide what deserves to survive. Strategy is not about adding more. It is about choosing what to remove so what remains can expand without resistance. The tree of power, the trunk and the parasitic branches. Every system that grows eventually becomes a tree. At the center is the trunk, the source of strength, stability, and survival. The trunk represents revenue, authority, and position. Without it, nothing else matters. Around it grow branches, optimizations, side projects, improvements, experiments, and tasks that are easier to execute and more comfortable to maintain. These branches appear harmless. Many even look productive, but not all growth is healthy. The fatal mistake most leaders make is confusing branches for the trunk. They nurture peripheral improvements while the core weakens. They celebrate small wins while ignoring structural fragility. The organization looks active, innovative, and busy. Yet, its ability to generate real power slowly erodes. Feeding branches drains blood from the trunk. Branches grow because they are easy. They offer visible progress without requiring hard decisions. A new feature, a small optimization, a minor efficiency gain, all provide dopamine without risk. The trunk, by contrast, demands discomfort. Strengthening revenue, consolidating authority, and defending position require confrontation, prioritization, and often conflict. This is why weak leaders avoid the trunk and hide in the branches. A wise ruler understands one brutal truth. The trunk must be protected at all costs. Everything that does not directly reinforce it is expendable. Pruning is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of survival. Cutting branches feels violent only to those who do not understand biology. In nature, trees that are not pruned collapse under their own weight. In organizations, the result is the same. Pruning requires courage because it invites short-term pain. People will complain, teams will resist, metrics will dip temporarily. But failure to prune is slow suicide. Resources are finite. Every branch consumes attention, capital, and time. Left unchecked, branches multiply until the trunk can no longer sustain them. Collapse does not arrive suddenly. It arrives quietly, disguised as overextension. Strong leaders carry scissors without apology. They do not negotiate with inefficiency. They do not sentimentalize obsolete initiatives. They recognize that loyalty to weak branches is betrayal of the trunk. This is where most leaders fail. They confuse kindness with leadership and inclusion with strength. Power does not reward compassion without structure. The true test of leadership is not what you add, but what you are willing to cut. When pressure increases, branches must die so the trunk can thicken. Only then does the tree gain the ability to withstand storms. Pruning is not optional. Refusing to prune is not mercy. It is self-destruction disguised as restraint. If you want power, protect the trunk. Everything else is negotiable. The illusion of progress. How BS problems sedate the mind. Progress is easiest to fake when the problems are easy. This is the trap of BS problems. They are not meaningless. They are simply non-decisive. They feel productive, generate movement, and deliver small wins that release dopamine. They calm anxiety without changing destiny. And that is precisely why they are dangerous. BS problems are attractive because they are solvable without confrontation. They can be delegated, optimized, scheduled, and measured. They reward effort quickly, fix a workflow, improve a metric, tweak a process, clean up a backlog. Each solution creates the sensation of advancement while quietly avoiding the question that matters most. Is power actually increasing? Hard problems, AIDS problems, do not offer comfort. They resist delegation. They expose weakness. They demand ownership, risk, and the possibility of visible failure. They do not reward effort immediately. They punish hesitation. This is why most people unconsciously flee toward BS problems. They choose activity over impact, certainty over leverage. The mind is easily seduced by visible progress. Humans evolved to seek short-term feedback. A checked box feels like control. A solved ticket feels like competence. Over time, this trains people to prefer tasks that move numbers without moving position. They become busy caretakers of systems that never become stronger. The result is a life spent working that never compounds. Organizations fall into the same trap. Meetings multiply, dashboards grow, optimization becomes a culture, everyone is occupied, metrics improve incrementally, and yet nothing fundamental changes. Revenue plateaus. Authority remains fragile. Competitive position erodes. The organization is awake, but its power is asleep. This is the illusion of progress. Motion without trajectory. It is possible to solve BS problems forever and never become formidable. In fact, many people do exactly that. They spend entire careers refining secondary systems while the core remains untouched. They are rewarded with comfort, not dominance. BS problems are not evil. They are necessary, but only after the decisive problems are addressed. The error is inversion. When secondary issues are treated as primary, the system rots from the center outward. Easy work expands to fill all available time. While hard work is postponed indefinitely, tomorrow becomes a permanent excuse. Those who gain power learn to tolerate discomfort without immediate reward. They delay dopamine. They sit with unresolved tension. They resist the urge to feel productive and instead pursue what is consequential. This discipline separates builders from maintainers. Most people remain busy their entire lives and never grow stronger, not because they lack intelligence or effort, but because they allow BX problems to lull them into a false sense of momentum. Real progress feels slow, heavy and uncertain until suddenly it is irreversible. The illusion feels good today. Power belongs to those who endure the opposite. The eighth problem, the bottleneck of power. Every system, no matter how large or complex, is constrained by a single bottleneck at any given moment. This is not theory, it is law. Growth does not fail everywhere at once. It fails at one point, and that point quietly dictates the limits of everything else. This is the eighth law problem, the constraint that controls power. Most people misunderstand complexity. They assume that because a system has many problems, they must address many problems at once. This instinct is fatal. When attention is divided, leverage disappears. The eighth problem does not compete for attention. It dominates the outcome whether it is acknowledged or not. Solve the bottleneck and secondary problems collapse on their own. Ignore it and no amount of optimization elsewhere will matter. This is why so much effort produces so little result. People work around the constraint instead of through it. They decorate the system while its foundation remains cracked. The eighth problem is uncomfortable because it exposes reality. It is rarely technical. It is usually structural, political, or psychological. It may involve pricing, authority, leadership alignment, or a refusal to confront an unpleasant truth. These problems resist delegation because they implicate decision makers directly. They cannot be solved by process alone. Most people prefer to optimize systems that will not survive once the bottleneck is removed. They improve workflows for products that will be killed. They refine messaging for strategies that will be abandoned. They polish structures built on false assumptions. When the real constraint is finally addressed, all that effort becomes irrelevant overnight. This is the hidden cost of solving problems out of sequence. Order matters more than effort. Timing matters more than intelligence. Solving the wrong problem well is still failure. The system does not reward diligence. It rewards alignment with reality. Power concentrates around the bottleneck because that is where causality lives. Those who identify it early gain disproportionate advantage. Those who avoid it are trapped in a cycle of diminishing returns. They work harder each year to maintain the same position, mistaking motion for progress. Leaders who understand power ask a different question. Not what can we improve, but what is currently limiting everything. This question feels narrow, even simplistic. Yet, it unlocks leverage. Once the constraint is attacked directly, speed returns, morale shifts, and complexity collapses into clarity. There is always only one ace problem at a time. Everything else is noise. Solving it requires focus, courage, and the willingness to let other issues decay temporarily. This is where most people hesitate. They fear neglect more than stagnation. But power is not built by balancing priorities. It is built by breaking bottlenecks. The A-fault problem does not wait for permission. It defines the battlefield. Those who choose to fight elsewhere lose regardless of how hard they work. True strategy, one command only. Strategy is often misunderstood as complexity. People associate it with long documents, multiple objectives, layered plans, and elaborate frameworks. In reality, true strategy is reduction. It strips away everything that does not directly serve a single outcome. When strategy is correct, it can be expressed as one command. Multiple goals are not ambition. They are confusion. When everything matters, nothing does. Energy fractures, attention leaks, execution slows. A system with many priorities behaves as if it has none. This is why most organizations appear active but achieve little of lasting consequence. Power concentrates only when force is unified. A single objective aligns behavior without explanation. It removes debate, eliminates hesitation, and simplifies decision-making. Every action can be judged by one question. Does this advance the command or not? If the answer is no, the action is eliminated. Leadership is not the act of issuing more instructions. It is the act of destroying competing instructions. Most leaders fail here. They add directives instead of removing them. They attempt to motivate without choosing. They seek consensus where clarity is required. The result is paralysis disguised as collaboration. One command feels dangerous because it creates exposure. If the command is wrong, there is nowhere to hide. This is why weak leaders prefer portfolios of objectives. They spread responsibility so failure becomes ambiguous. But ambiguity kills power. A system that cannot fail clearly cannot win decisively. True strategy forces trade-offs into the open. Choosing one command automatically invalidates dozens of reasonable alternatives. This is not a flaw. It is the mechanism that creates leverage. When resources are finite, dilution is defeat. Concentration is dominance. History favors those who understood this. Empires did not rise by pursuing balance. They rose by pursuing obsession. Every great expansion, every decisive victory, every lasting position was the result of unified intent. The moment an empire tried to please all fronts, decline began. One command does not mean simplicity of execution. It means simplicity of purpose. Execution can remain complex, adaptive, and tactical, but purpose remains singular. This distinction is critical. Confusing multiple tactics with multiple goals leads to fragmentation. Those who resist this principle often claim they need flexibility. What they really want is optionality. They want the comfort of retreat. But strategy is not about preserving options. Strategy is about committing so deeply that retreat becomes irrational. When there is only one command, speed increases. Conflict decreases, decisions become obvious. People stop asking what to do and start acting. Momentum compounds because energy is no longer spent negotiating priorities. If you want power, reduce your strategy until only one order remains. Protect it, enforce it, eliminate everything that competes with it. Leadership begins not when you tell people what to do, but when you decide what must no longer be done. The art of calculated cruelty. Power is not maintained by constant intervention. It is maintained by disciplined neglect. This is the truth that makes most people uncomfortable, especially those who confuse leadership with rescue. The art of calculated cruelty is not about causing harm for its own sake. It is about allowing small fires to burn so the entire structure does not collapse. Most leaders instinctively rush to extinguish every problem. Every complaint is addressed. Every inefficiency is corrected. Every conflict is mediated. On the surface, this looks responsible. In reality, it trains dependency and destroys resilience. A system that is protected from minor pain becomes fragile. It learns nothing. It adapts to nothing. Small failures are information. They reveal weak assumptions, poor incentives, and false priorities. When leaders immediately intervene, they erase this information. They replace learning with comfort. Over time, the system grows increasingly sensitive, requiring more attention to function at the same level. Eventually, leadership becomes firefighting, not direction. Calculated cruelty means choosing which fires to ignore. It means tolerating localized damage to protect the whole. This requires emotional control. Watching small problems escalate triggers anxiety, guilt, and fear of judgment. Weak leaders give in to these emotions. Strong leaders endure them. Not every problem deserves resolution. Some problems must be allowed to fail publicly so their cost becomes undeniable. Only then does the system self-correct. Only then do people adjust behavior without coercion. Pain teaches faster than explanation. This principle applies at every level. In organizations, teams that are shielded from consequences do not improve. Individuals who are rescued from their mistakes do not grow. Markets that are overprotected stagnate. Strength emerges only where pressure is allowed to operate. Calculated cruelty is strategic, not emotional. It is not impulsive punishment. It is deliberate restraint. The leader decides in advance which failures are acceptable and which are existential. Everything else is noise. By refusing to react to non-lethal problems, leadership preserves attention for what actually threatens power. Most people cannot tolerate this pressure. They crave approval. They fear being seen as indifferent. They want to be liked. These desires are incompatible with leadership. Power requires the willingness to be misunderstood. There is a limit to this approach. Ignoring existential threats is incompetence. But intervening everywhere is also incompetence. The difference lies in discernment. The strong distinguish between fires that illuminate weakness and fires that consume foundations. Those who cannot endure this responsibility should not lead. Leadership is not comfort. It is burden. The art of calculated cruelty demands the ability to watch short-term suffering in service of long-term survival. Those who master it build systems that grow stronger under stress. Those who do not burn out trying to save everything and lose it all. The rhythm of power, force, speed. Power does not move at a natural pace. It moves at a pace imposed by those who understand urgency. Speed is not a byproduct of efficiency. It is a weapon. Those who control tempo control outcomes. This is why force speed is one of the most underappreciated tools of power. Most systems drift toward slowness. Meetings expand, decisions delay, problems linger. Time becomes a buffer that protects people from accountability. Slowness feels safe because it reduces pressure, but safety is the enemy of dominance. Without pressure, truth remains hidden. Forced speed collapses illusions. Short deadlines expose priorities. When time is compressed, people reveal what actually matters to them. Excuses disappear, false dependencies surface. What cannot be done quickly is often not essential. What truly matters finds a way forward under constraint. Increasing the frequency of checkpoints is not micromanagement. It is reality enforcement. When updates are rare, narratives replace facts. When cadence tightens, performance becomes visible. People stop pretending and start executing, or they are exposed. Most leaders hesitate to impose speed because they fear resistance. They worry about morale, burnout, and fairness. These concerns are not invalid, but they are secondary. Power requires clarity before comfort. A system that cannot operate under pressure is already broken. Speed merely reveals it. Forced speed also eliminates parallel distractions. When timelines are aggressive, there is no room for side projects or working on something else. Attention converges. Trade-offs become unavoidable. This is precisely the point. Power grows when focus is enforced, not requested. In high-pressure environments, hierarchy clarifies. Decision rights become obvious. Those who can decide quickly rise. Those who need consensus slow the system and are sidelined. Speed is not democratic, it is selective. There is a difference between chaos and urgency. Chaos lacks direction. Urgency has intent. Forced speed without a clear command creates confusion. Forced speed aligned to a single objective creates momentum. This is why speed must follow strategy, not precede it. The rhythm of power is uneven. It alternates between compression and consolidation. But when acceleration is required, hesitation is fatal. Markets do not wait. Competitors do not pause. Internal comfort cannot outweigh external reality. Those who master forced speed gain a decisive advantage. They learn faster, they adapt quicker. They exploit windows others miss because they are still debating. Speed compounds knowledge just as focus compounds effort. In the end, power favors those who impose tempo rather than inherit it. If you allow the world to set your pace, you will always be reacting. When you force speed, you shift from defense to offense, and once tempo is under your control, outcomes follow. Commitment. Eliminating all escape routes. Commitment is widely misunderstood because it is often reduced to words, promises, or intentions. In reality, commitment is structural. It is not what you say you will do. It is what you make impossible to avoid. As long as an escape route exists, commitment is optional, and optional effort always collapses under pressure. Human behavior is predictable. When alternatives remain available, people hedge, they delay, they rationalize, they betray priorities in moments of discomfort. This is not moral failure. It is design failure. Systems produce the behavior they allow. If retreat is possible, retreat will eventually be chosen. True commitment removes choice. It burns bridges, closes doors, and destroys the safety net. This is why commitment feels terrifying. It converts future uncertainty into present pressure. Once there is no way back, all energy is forced forward. Momentum becomes unavoidable. Most people prefer flexibility because it feels intelligent. In reality, flexibility often masks indecision. Keeping options open feels like freedom, but it slowly erodes intensity. Energy disperses across alternatives, and none receive enough force to compound. Progress stalls without appearing to fail. Strong institutions understand this instinctively. Marriage endures not because it is easy, but because it removes alternatives. Strategy works not because it is clever, but because it eliminates retreat. When there is no plan B, plan A receives total focus. Execution sharpens, tolerance for distraction collapses. Commitment transforms psychology. Effort increases because consequences are real. Creativity improves because survival demands it. When people cannot escape, they adapt. When they can, they excuse. This is the difference between involvement and ownership. Most leaders hesitate to enforce commitment because it feels extreme. They worry about morale, fairness, and backlash. But half commitment is worse than none. It creates false security while preserving fragility. A system that pretends to commit without removing exits breeds cynicism and disengagement. Commitment also clarifies trust. Those who remain after exits are closed reveal genuine alignment. Those who resist expose misfit early. This is not cruelty, it is efficiency. It is better to lose people quickly than to carry dead weight indefinitely. There is no power without risk. Commitment concentrates risk, and risk concentrates attention. When bridges are burned deliberately, hesitation disappears. People stop asking whether something will work and start asking how to make it work. If you want strength, remove your escape routes. Do not motivate with speeches. Restructure reality. Design systems where success is the only viable outcome. Commitment is not emotional intensity. It is architectural finality. Once exits are gone, power has room to grow. The graveyard of unfinished bridges. Most ventures do not fail because they were wrong. They fail because they were never finished. The world is littered with half-built bridges, projects that consume time, money, and belief yet never reach the other side. This graveyard is not filled with bad ideas. It is filled with abandoned execution. Ideas are abundant. Starting is easy. Momentum at the beginning is intoxicating. Energy flows when the path is clear and the vision feels exciting. But completion is where reality asserts itself. Finishing demands endurance, discipline, and the willingness to push through boredom, resistance, and diminishing novelty. This is where most efforts die. An unfinished bridge generates no value. It does not matter how much has already been invested. Half a bridge does not move people, goods, or capital. It simply stands as a monument to wasted effort. The market does not reward progress. It rewards arrival. Many organizations mistake activity for completion. They celebrate milestones, iterations, and partial launches. They measure success by how much has been built rather than by whether the bridge actually carries weight. This creates a dangerous illusion of advancement. Resources continue to be consumed while returns remain zero. Money only flows when the bridge is complete. Until then, all investment is speculative. Revenue, trust, and power appear only after delivery. This is why serial starters struggle. They move from project to project, always in motion, never compounding. Each new beginning resets leverage back to zero. Finishing is psychologically difficult because it removes fantasy. As long as something is unfinished, potential remains infinite. Once completed, it can be judged. It can fail publicly. Many people prefer the safety of potential to the risk of exposure. This preference quietly sabotages power. Strong leaders design systems that prioritize completion over novelty. They resist the urge to start new initiatives before old ones are finished. They understand that every unfinished project taxes attention and drains credibility. Momentum is not created by movement but by closure. There is also a strategic cost to leaving bridges unfinished. Each abandoned effort weakens future commitments. Teams learn that quitting is acceptable. Partners lose confidence. The system becomes fragile because it cannot sustain pressure through the final phase. Completion is not glamorous. It is often repetitive, thankless, and slow. But it is the only phase where effort converts into leverage. Those who master completion gain disproportionate advantage. Not because they are more creative, but because they are more disciplined. If you want power, stop building bridges to nowhere. Choose fewer projects and carry them across the gap. The graveyard is already full. Power belongs to those who finish what they start. The final lesson. Power belongs to those who choose the right battle. Most people spend their lives fighting constantly and still lose. They win small victories, resolve minor conflicts, and collect incremental improvements, yet never change their position. This is because power is not accumulated through the number of battles fought, but through the choice of which battle to commit to fully. The mediocre seek constant validation. They fight many small wars because each one offers quick proof of competence, a solved problem, a closed deal, a visible win. These victories feel productive, but they rarely alter the balance of power. They consume energy without reshaping the field. The dominant think differently. They understand that not all battles matter and that most are distractions. They wait, they observe, they conserve resources. When they move with total force toward a single objective that cannot be ignored. One decisive confrontation matters more than a lifetime of minor successes. Strategy is not about making everything better. It is about making one thing unbeatable. This requires restraint. It requires the discipline to let lesser problems persist while attention is focused elsewhere. This restraint is often misinterpreted as weakness or indecision. In reality, it is preparation. Choosing the right battle means understanding leverage. It means identifying the conflict that once one makes all other conflicts irrelevant. This is rarely obvious. It often appears risky, uncomfortable, or disproportionate. That is precisely why others avoid it. Those who chase balance never dominate. They spread effort evenly, seeking fairness and stability. The result is mediocrity. Power emerges from imbalance, from overwhelming strength applied at the point that matters most. The final lesson is not complicated, but it is unforgiving. If you choose the wrong battle, excellence will not save you. Intelligence will not save you. Hard work will not save you. You will exhaust yourself refining outcomes that do not matter. Those who choose correctly change the rules. They do not win within the existing game, they reshape the game itself. Once the decisive battle is won, resistance collapses. Competitors retreat. Pressure dissipates. What once required effort becomes inevitable. Most people never experience this because they are afraid to commit everything to a single confrontation. They hedge. They keep options open. They fight safe battles that cannot change their fate. Power belongs to those who accept risk in pursuit of finality. Choose the right battle. Ignore the rest.